Hello and welcome to our panel today. We're really excited to have three panelists with us to address voting and civic engagement around the world. Obviously, we are not going to cover the whole world today, but we have three panelists who are going to really share with us about their home country. And part of the goal of doing this is really, as we think about our election season and what it means to be engaged, we recognize that on our campus, we have folks who voting may not be an accessible option to be engaged, but one of the values and beliefs is we can all still be engaged. We can all be active citizens. We can all advocate and help making a difference. And so we think doing a panel like this and expanding our worldview a little bit is one of those ways to do that. So we're going to start with quick introductions. So in just a second, I'll pass it to Jerry. If you're willing to share your home country, what you're studying at CSU, and maybe something you love about being a CSU Ram, that would be a great start. Go ahead, Jerry.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry. I use she, her pronouns. I am from Vietnam. That's my home country. I'm a grad student studying in student affairs and higher education. One thing that I love at CSU is spending time at the Oval. It's so beautiful and green. And now it's kind of like changing to the fall colors. I'm really vibing with that. Yeah, and I'll pass it on to Montse.
Hi everybody, my name is Montse. I use she, her pronouns, and my home country is Spain. I'm an undergraduate studying biochemistry at CSU. And yeah, I would say that the Oval is my favorite thing about CSU. The first time I even went there, that was the first thing I saw. It was so green, and I love spending time there. And I actually love also riding to school every morning. I just really enjoy it. And I'll pass it to Guney.
Hi everyone, I'm Guney. I'm from Turkey. I use him, he, him, his as pronouns. I got here last year, but because of quarantine, I wasn't able to enjoy the campus as much as I expected to do so. But the thing is, I think I love the fact that the logo of CS2 is RAM, because my former university has a logo of RAM as well.
And I realized to start off, I didn't introduce myself. That's probably moderator fail 101. My name is Lance Wright. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I work on campus in the Laurie Student Center. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. And we're just gonna jump right in and really have a conversation and want to focus as much as we can on these three great folks and to share a little bit about their home country. So let's start and share about the type of government in your home country and how it's organized politically. Anybody want to jump in and take that one first?
I can do it.
Thanks, Montse.
Okay, so Spain is a unitary country. So like the government is it's focused in the center and like in the capital in Spain. But also it's a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, which means that we have a monarchy that has very limited power. They are ruled under the constitution, but they are only like a representative figure of the country. So who has the power is the parliament, and there is a shared constitution for the whole country. However, the country is also divided in 17 communities, and each one of them has their own kind of like government, but still the power resides in the capital in Madrid. And yeah, so we have a king, and we established our democracy in the 70s after a dictatorship that lasted since the end of the Civil War in the 90s, 1939 until 1975. There was a dictatorship, and then democracy was established in Spain.
I can go next. So Vietnam is a one-party socialist republic. I think a lot of people, there was an assumption it's a communist country, but I learned that it's a socialist republic country, and then the Communist Party do exist in Vietnam, but it's a non-governmental function. And so, yeah, there is a prime minister that is in charge, and they have multiple like vice prime minister. And then they have three branches of the government. So there's the military. There's also the National Assembly, which I think is pretty similar to like what we would call the Congress, the House of Representatives here. There are 500 representatives in the National Assembly. And then there's the legal system with the People's Supreme Court, is how I would see the government is structured. But yeah, we used to have a monarchy, but that ended pretty quickly in World War One. This government was established in 1975 after what people call here the Vietnam War, but we over there call it American War. So after 1975, the Socialist Party took over and have formed the government. We have a constitution. Apparently the newest one was written in 1992. So it's pretty new. Everything's pretty new.
Can I go?
Yes, please, Guney.
As you might know, Turkish roots were like Ottoman Empire till 1920, and after 1920, Sultan was abandoned and National Assembly was created. And then till 2017, Turkey was being ruled by as constitutional parliamentary system. But in 2017, after a referendum, we switched to a presidential system, like similar to the United States. We still have parliamentary as a legislation function, as a legislative function. We have president as an executive function, and Supreme Court, Constitutional Court, we call it. It's the judiciary part of the Turkish system.
So it sounds like a pretty, very different forms of government between the three countries. And as we compare the United States and imagining we're representing three countries around the world, how many other forms of government are out there as we think about this? And we're so fortunate to get introduced to three today. So if each of you would take a moment to talk about how voting is organized in your country. So what is the process? For example, how often do you vote? When do you vote? If you vote more than once a year, where and how do you vote? And how old do you have to be? So just take on some of those kind of things. Guney, you want to jump back in there and talk about
sure.
Turkey?
After we switched to presidential system, it was actually, again, like 5 years at time. We select for our parliamentary, but we also go to national elections every 5 years to choose both president and parliament, ruling government for the ruling parties and stuff. But we also go to a voting booth for local elections as well, for municipalities, and it's also 5 years.
Jerry, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So we vote for the president, the prime minister, and everybody in the National Assembly serve on the same rotation in a 5-year rotation. So every 5 years, we would have a national election to vote for those folks. And I think there's like local government. I think a lot of the thing is like in Vietnam, a lot of local government positions are appointed, not. So like you would apply as if it was a job and then you would get a promotion and whatnot. So I don't remember voting a lot in local election. I think every 2 years or so we vote for like the local governor and whatnot. But most of my memory was in the national election. It's always a big holiday. It's always on a Sunday. We don't actually know. So in the Constitution, it said like they announce what Sunday is going to be at least 4 months before the election is going to happen. So we don't actually know until that year. So we know the general year would be. So the last election was 2016. The next one is going to be in 2021. So in 2021, around January, people are like, okay, when are we voting? So then the government will announce on this particular Sunday, you're going to vote, here who you're going to vote for. You have to be 18 to be voting. And then if you want to run for office, you have to be 21.
Jerry, can you talk a little bit more about the holiday piece? So what does that mean in Vietnam in terms of, are most things closed? on a Sunday? What does that look like? And that may be different than what we experience here in the United States.
Yeah, I remember it was like a whole thing. Like I was a child. I remember I was so young, like in elementary school. That was like my first election. And my mom was allowed to take me into the voting booth with her. So everybody like dressed up and then like we go. And I didn't know it was gonna be on a Sunday until I was on this panel. I was like called my mom. I was like, when is voting in Vietnam? She was like, it's always on a Sunday. We just don't know what day. And I'm like, that makes sense because I remember I'm like, when like does my parents take off work to do this? Because everybody was free, and then you would just see people flocking the street because there's always like we vote by district, so we would just go to whatever the district office it is, and like we have really small district, so we can like I remember like holding my mom's hand and they like walked me to the voting booth, and then like she would like hold me up so that I can like see into the thing, and then she told me like, oh, you crossed the name out if you don't like that person. I don't like that person, I want to cross that out. So it's like a whole thing, and then like people would call your house if you don't show up for voting. So it's like a whole thing, and then it's always like there's people holding little Vietnam flag and they were like waving, and it's like a really fun memory.
Thank you for sharing that. Montse, you want to share a little?
Yeah, so elections in Spain are every 4 years, but the president can choose to do an early election if that's the case. And then it's normally on Sundays, but it's not strictly on Sundays. But yeah, so everybody would be free, like mainly because in Spain, stores and supermarkets, everything is closed on Sundays. And then, so whenever we vote, we don't vote for only the president. So every party, it's not a bipartisan, like we have so many parties. So every party makes a list of their preferred, like they just number the candidates. So the first one's gonna be the president, and then there's what's called a proportion, like it's like a proportional representation. So the percentage that you get, it's gonna be how many of those people go to the Congress. But what's happening is like we vote for our little communities. So I'll vote in Catalonia, which is where I'm from. And then Catalonia has 4 seats, or it has not 4 seats, but it has like a proportion of seats in the parliament in central Spain. So every community is gonna vote a different list. And from this list, the first people and like the proportion is the one that's gonna go sit as Congress. And then what it's like also like by district, so you can only vote in one place that you are assigned. You are sent a card with an address, and it's probably the public school that is closest to your house. And you go there with your ID, and they cross you out of a list. So like an ID, like the Spanish ID. And then you choose the list. There's like a table with all the different parties. You choose the list with just the paper with the list of the party you want to vote for. And then you place it in a transparent box. And then people, at the end of the day at 8 p.m., they close it. And then they count the votes by hand. So it's not done electronically. They voted by hand.
Can I also add, I just give little detail, I just realized. I think Turkish election system is pretty much similar to the one in Spain. The only difference is like they don't give us the assigned list of the parties. We just get everything and we just choose whoever we are going to vote, and like there is only one list. And we need to be 18, and we just go to the public school nearby us, and we vote. And there is a proportional representation. There are the candidates who is assigned by the party based on their vote number. They just go and represent us in the National Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
This is my mind wanders a lot, and so like shiny things as you all are sharing of additional questions, but I'm going to try to stay on track here. So just a couple of things to think about. It sounds like in all of your countries, you do have to vote in person at a specific place. And would it be true that it's one place? You can't choose between polling locations. So it sounds like that's shared. That'd be true, Jerry? Okay. Yeah, and so again, some similarities, but also a lot of differences. let me just ask each of you quickly, have you had a chance to participate in elections in your country based on your age and when you've been there, or not yet?
I voted 2 times for local elections and national elections.
Yeah, the age is 18, so I voted for general elections and also for my little like regions elections too.
Nice. So a couple times. Jerry, what about you? It sounds like no.
No, I turned 18 in April, moved to the United States in June, and the election was in November. So I missed it. I haven't been able to vote. They come for my house every year and they're like, "Where's Jerry?" And my mom had to fill his paperwork, but like she's abroad. And they said like, "Well, we would do mail-in voting, but that's too far." So we never done it.
Yeah.
I think I can add something for Turkish citizens. If they live abroad, they can just go to the embassies in wherever country they are in, and they vote there.
Okay. So you would be able to vote now if there was an election coming up in Turkey. Is that true for you, Montse, as well? Would you be able to vote while you're abroad?
Yes, but it's pretty expensive to vote by mail. Yeah, so I've never been on an elections and I've been abroad, but my sister doesn't live in Spain either, and she wanted to vote, but she would have to travel to the capital of the country she's living and like pay the fees, and so it's not an easy process to vote from abroad.
Great. Thanks. That's some great insight into how everybody does that a little bit differently and what participation looks like. And I think that first time voting is always something special and something, hopefully you remember. So Jerry, you've still got that to look forward to, of that time you get to vote in Vietnam. So voting is just one piece of what we consider civic engagement and what we're trying to talk about. I'm wondering what other examples of engagement for your citizens in your home country could be. And the panel was talking before we let everybody else in and kind of recognize this panel is a form of civic engagement. It's a way to engage in the political process, to be a part of it. And so wondering if you could each think about maybe one or two other ways people engage with your governments and in the political process in your home country.
Well, I can talk, but it's going to be a little bit politics rather than like more political system discussion. Like there are like some social protests like every year for different social movements like LGBTQ, feminist movement and stuff. But since 2015, there is a little bit suppression by the government. So I don't think the minorities are not able to raise their voice as much as they used to. And also, since there is a suppression, they just switch to the social media to raise their voices. But there is also heavily monitored media right now, so they cannot use that platform as well. The other thing, which is safe, but it's not useful, I think, online petition systems.
So using protests for sure. And we'll come back to that because I think certainly for the context we're living in the US, that's important right now.
Yeah, so I spent a year of college in Spain, and I remember there were just youth groups in the university, like they were not affiliated to a party, but they were affiliated to movements, like to social movements. So whenever it was International Women's Day, they would be like, they would like assemble people to go protest, or whenever they were like the Fridays for the future, for climate change, they would also like strike on Fridays and go to like downtown in Barcelona to like go to a demonstration together. So I think that people are not that much associated to a particular party. They're more like towards like a social movement, and then they try to find like which is the party that represents better that like their like affiliations.
Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, I think town hall meetings is the thing. I remember my family goes to those a lot. So it would be like a district town hall, and people would come and like tell like, hey, we want this change in the community and whatnot. Social media is another way to be engaged, but much similar to Guney said. it's pretty heavily monitored during election season. So in 2016, I like remember that I could not get on Facebook. Like it just like not a thing. Like I can't not be on Facebook because the government is like, we're not gonna monitor you. We're just not gonna give you access to like just like suck it up for a few days until election is over, and then you can go back on Facebook. And so I remember that being in high school and not being on Facebook, and as a teenager I was like, oh my god, my world's ending. Yeah, ever since I left, there has been I wouldn't call them protests because it's not at the scale that I would think of, like, and when I think about protests, but there have been demonstration in the capital city for LGBTQ rights. It's still not legal in Vietnam. Every single year during Pride, like when there's Pride Month in the US in the summer, there's also demonstration and Pride in Vietnam to just kind of like call for the legalization of same-sex marriage.
Thank you. Great examples. You know, one thing I realized we didn't address earlier that could lead into some of the civic engagement is whether or not do you have to register to vote in your country. Obviously, one of the things you'll see in the US, and if this year's different, obviously with COVID, but on the plaza, you'd have a lot of different groups registering people to vote, and that's another way to engage civically. So in your country, is there a registration process? Are there pushes like that to get people to register? Are you automatically registered? How does that work?
In Turkey, we are automatically registered by our local, not local governments, but like the district neighbor governments, like get our voting IDs, and we just go to that office and get it. That's all.
Yeah, so I was really surprised whenever somebody came to me in the plaza and was like, "Are you registered to vote?" I was like, "Well, first, I'm not from here, but also, what is this?" No, so in Spain, you are like whenever you turn 18, if you're like you have a national, like you have an ID, you get that ID whenever you're a kid. So they already have you. So whenever you turn 18, you immediately become part of the electoral like pool of people. So they just like, if they know your address, they're gonna send like you the address at which you have to vote.
Yeah, I was like, you have to register to vote. That was odd. At my house, we would have this little book. Everybody in the household would have a little book that like is registered with the government, and if you add or like if somebody passed away, you would like adjust the book so that the government always have a record of who's living there. And so whenever you vote, you just make sure that the address that you're living in is matching with your license, because that determines what district you're gonna vote. But like, let's say if I go to the capital city and I lived there for a few years and the election comes around, I just need to make sure that my little book, like wherever is, have my name on it and my license have an updated address, and I just take that over. And usually they'll just yell at me if I go to the wrong district, and they're like, go over there, and I'm like, okay, I'll go over there or whatever. Usually that happened to my mom and I, because I always get to go with my mom. So they would like, one time she like went to the wrong district, and they're like, yeah, wrong district. But yeah, no, when you move, you don't have to update your registration or anything like that. And if you don't vote, they check in to make sure that you're like, are you in the country? Like, are you alive? Like, what's happening? Yeah.
Great. So that's a great transition to our next question, thinking about, you know, as you've experienced some of the voting cycle and season in the United States, obviously not needing to register in all of your countries is a huge difference. And when you think about, when you think about the energy that goes into registration here and how much time is put into that, right? That's a huge difference. Can you share some other differences between your home country's process in the United States, and also if there's things that feel familiar and comparable to what you've experienced in your home countries?
I can start. So I believe in here, only president can be here for 2 terms. So in Spain, there's no limit to how many years a president can be in power. Also, I think another, it's not related to voting that much, but we don't have a bipartisan like structure. So to get a president, it's not like we have the results of the election by the night of the election day, but we don't have a president because normally they don't have like the absolute like majority. So they need to do coalitions between the different parties to elect the president, and that takes maybe months. So there's months that we don't have like a president. Like we have like a president, but we don't have like the real president of the country because 2/3 of the parliament need to accept the president.
And Montse, you've mentioned a couple of times that there are multiple parties. Can you just give us an idea? And I know it probably changes from cycle to cycle, but how many parties are involved in the political process in Spain?
So many.
So many.
So I would say that right now there's 4 big ones. But then there's also, I feel like each community has like the national party kind of for that community. So like mine would be the Catalonian party. It's not like a Catalonian party, but the one that like push more for Catalonia. So they have a power, but then there's like 4 main parties that pretty much share their votes. So it's very hard to like get an agreement between the 4 of them because there's like a socialist one. There's like right wing, and then there's like central wing. So it's very hard to really make them work together. But at the same time, it kind of shows like the difference like spectrum we have in our society. And then so it used to be like a bipartisan thing, but then new parties after the creation of the democracy kind of like were created. And yeah, so I would say there's like 10 different parties at least in the government, in the parliament.
So a very big difference there between what you see in the US.
Yeah.
Who else wants to jump in with some of the differences or commonalities?
I can add to what Montse says. Turkey has also like a multiple party system. So we have like 10 to 14 parties maybe, but since there is a threshold that the certain votes they need to get like 10% of the total votes, they only 4 or mostly 4 parties can be represented in the National Assembly, which I think hampers the democracy. And I think this is the main difference between the 2-party system. I know, but it's not a strictly 2-party system, but 2-party system in the United States. The biggest difference is there. And the also the whole month that people can vote through mail and stuff, it's very interesting for me too, because people like, there is a like low interpersonal trust against government. So people just wants to go there, physically be there and like watch the counting of the votes in the public district schools. And like there is like some non-profit organizations like creating some apps to track the voting numbers and stuff, whether they are consistent with what the government shows us. So basically they took the final form of the counted votes and like upload to the system, and people can check with how many votes are in their districts and whether it's matches to the government records.
Thank you.
Yeah, so unlike Spain and Turkey, we only have one party. So sometimes, but I fact checked myself because I was like, everybody in my neighborhood showed up. Like I think the biggest difference for me is the turnout in the voting. Is that like in my country there's one party and like we usually get over 90% turnout for voting in the entire country. And when I got here and the first time I heard like, oh my God, we got 50% people to show up. I'm like, really? What happened to the rest? So thinking about that, like that was a huge culture shock for me because I was like, oh, there are folks who cannot vote. There's folks who didn't choose not to vote. And there's folks who are voting are not accessible. And I was like, wow, that's really different from my country. I think the level, because there's only one political party, the level of political campaigning is like itty bitty comparing to like all the money that they spend here. Like when I hear people spend billions of dollars for their political campaign, I was like, wow. Like it was rare for us to maybe see like posters and like it was pretty common to see poster and banners for political candidates. But one time I remember there was a person who had rented out a van and they printed their face on it, and I was like, oh, this person's really going all out. And then like comparing to the United States, that is definitely very minimal. Yeah, so I definitely think that. And then yeah, when Montse was talking about like putting it in a clear envelope, in clear container, that I have very vivid memories of that, of like helping my mom putting a little envelope into a clear box and people count it in front of you, because people, yeah, especially when it's one party, people are like, we don't really trust this. Like, is this gonna be actually be counted? Is this election rigged? So there's constant like, you know, questioning of like, is my vote being counted?
Great, thank you so much. And I saw a lot of head shaking when Jerry was speaking about the money in politics. And so do either of the, Montse or Guney, do you want to jump in on that and just kind of share what that looks like in your system and if it's different?
I mean, like Turkey also has like huge campaigning, but I don't believe it's not as near as the one in the United States. It's crazy.
Yeah. Whenever elections come around, the streets start getting like flags from the different parties. But I just think also like the money spent in this country is way bigger because the size of this country is just way bigger than our countries. Well, I mean, at least Spain. So yeah, but you see, like you start seeing like the different like campaigns, and there's like so many campaigns. So there's also space on the TV like reserved for political campaign ads. So you see like 2 or 3 in a row.
Okay. And do the political parties involved have to pay for those, or are those set aside by the government for folks to share what their political point of view is? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I can say that I think until a certain period of time, like the ruling party was able to use the government money, but I think it's forbidden now. They usually get their campaign money from the members of the parties.
Great, thank you for sharing. So in the US, one of the protests has played a historical role from the Boston Tea Party and the founding of our country to now, when you're seeing a lot of marginalized communities in the US protesting, voicing their anger and frustration with the current system and what's going on. And I think you've all talked about protest a little bit, but want to specifically jump into that a little more, about whether protest is common in your country, how it's used. Is that a tool that citizens see as a way to reach their leaders by protesting? And again, more specifically, probably protesting in person. I think the social media component is a huge part of that. But as we think about this question, that idea of taking to the streets and protesting that way, how's that used, and if you see that a lot in your countries?
I can start. I think like Turkey is like one of the unique countries because of its geopolitical position between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. So Turkey got its fair share of Arab Spring, I believe, in 2015. Before that, like there was a huge social protest and like huge pride every year and stuff. And the Gezi protest in 2015, it was a crazy, like similar to what happened in BLM here. Then government just stepped down a little bit, but then apparently they just increased their suppression in terms of like limiting the protests, controlling, assigning police teams to the protest areas and stuff, controlling of whatever on social media is happening, like even like filing lawsuits if there is a criticism or against president, by calling it like a assault, something like that, verbal assault and stuff on the basis of verbal assault. There are still some like demonstrations and like protests, but it's not like effective as it was before.
Somebody else was saying hi there. Thanks, Guney.
Oh, I was like,
Eric,
oh.
you want to go?
Yeah. the biggest protest that I remember when I was in Vietnam is the one, there was this factory owned by a foreign company that there was a whistleblower. I know it was very dramatic. There was a whistleblower that came out and it's like, listen, all of the wastewater that is coming out of this factory is like not treated at all. And so we start like seeing fishermen community, which is like a majority of my country, suffering because fish just died, and like people start getting like poisoning from the water. So I remember like people protesting the government because the government would not remove this foreign company. They said it was like such a big partner and whatever, and we were like, no, get them out of here. Like, they're not following, they're not paying taxes, they're not doing all these things, they're killing our people, please get them out. So it span on for years. Like, you know, now that you drive by, the factory is still standing, there's still people protesting. And then, like I said, like there's demonstration for LGBTQ rights, mainly at the Capitol. But yeah, and then like before that, I think like most of the protests was during the Vietnam War, where folks was like not protesting their government, but they're protesting the American government. And they're like, yeah, so those protests get very extreme. There's folks who set themselves on fire and all of that. And so I have, you know, like those are like the memories are passed down from my grandparents and whatnot, but that the factory protest is still going on, and it's the big thing. Oh, there's another one, but that's one not actually a governmental protest. But there are protests because we have conflict in territory with China. We are protesting because there are certain maps that are drawn. They're called the cow tongue map that like dip from China all the way down to the Vietnam Sea, and then like they're like all these little islands where like indigenous Vietnamese people are living. Like, they belong to China now. So they're protesting the country to call for the government to provide more protections for folks who live on those islands, who are also fishermen. So yeah, we have a big fisherman community. So usually we get really amped up to support them.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you pulling it apart too, in the protest around what could be foreign powers, the protest around corporate entities in our countries, the protest of government, and how those often mix together and overlap, but that there really are distinct focuses of those protests. Yeah. Montse, you want to share?
Yeah, so in Spain we have we use protests a lot and demonstrations. They are pretty pacific, and we barely have the police having to separate demonstrations. Actually, yesterday there were some demonstrations because, well, so Columbus like left from Spain. So now this is a day in Spain that's called like the Hispanic Day. But in my like in my region, we're like really against this holiday, not only because what it all implies, but also because we're a little bit against, not against Spain, but we want to secede from Spain. So normally like very white supremacists concentrate on this day. So there was like Antifa and like very like white supremacists in like different parts of Spain yesterday. So the police had to separate them. But what I wanted to talk about is that we use demonstrations a lot. University students use demonstrations a lot to try to reduce the price of university. So to like push the university, and then the university to push for the government, because they're public schools, so they're like linked to the government. Also, retired people use demonstrations a lot because they are affiliated with unions of workers, so that they're like wages kind of like get raised. And then finally, what in my region, in like Catalonia, we want to secede from Spain. So there's been a lot of demonstrations, and we've like reached like 1 million people in like one place. So it's been like really, really awesome to be a part of those demonstrations. And like this pushed the Catalan Catalan government to do some changes that the Spanish government did not like. So yeah, but we use demonstrations a lot, and the police is always there to like make sure everything is specific. But there's not a lot of conflict related to that.
Great. And I think, one of the things that sort of demonstration is another form of what I believe civic engagement is, right? How do we engage? How do we speak to our leaders more directly using protest and those kind of forms of speech are an important way that we stay engaged civically. So thanks for sharing. I'm wondering for each of you, is this the first time you've observed a US election, and what are your thoughts and ideas, and as you watch the US electoral process and thinking about how it compares to your own country, but also just your personal, how are you experiencing this fall in the middle of a significant US campaign?
I can go. This is not my first time. 2016 was my first time observing a US election. And I think then a lot of people are like, who do you vote for? And I have to go through a painful conversation about how I'm not a citizen and I can't vote and things like that. But I just remember I was an RA and it was quite chaotic. Like November 3rd was, I have vivid memories of how chaotic that was because people was like watching TV. There's watch parties everywhere on my campus when I went to undergrad. And people would like check in with each other and say, do you vote? Do you vote? Who do you vote for? And then, like there would be like, and this is pre-COVID, I'm just thinking like, oh, people gathering. there would be people like, oh my God, I can't believe you voted for that person, or like, and then there are folks who will be like, okay, well, do you vote for other things too? Because that's not the only thing on the ticket. Like there's proposition for this and there's other things, like what do you vote on those things? And I think the most surprising thing for me is like when I was watching the TV, oh God, like the news channels here have so many headlines and all those things. And I remember there's numbers, like, like here's a number of vote for Hillary Clinton and here's a number of vote for Donald Trump. And I was like, oh, Hillary Clinton's winning because numbers, hello, like there's more votes. But then when the electoral college thing factor in, I was like, what is happening? I don't understand. And then that was the first time I learned about the electoral college and how that's different than the popular vote. Because in Vietnam, you win the popular vote, you win the popular vote. So I remember like in college we would write papers and I would be like, I don't know. I would say something along the line with like, the assumption that Donald Trump won the popular vote because I still am not used to it. And so my professor would be like, no, Jerry, he didn't win a popular vote. He won the electoral college system. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So that was a huge difference for me. I think this time around with the social unrest, with the Black Lives Matters movement and like healthcare and the passing of the Supreme Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think people get a lot more intense, but also a lot more quiet. I think it's because the pandemic really, limit gathering so that I don't hear a lot of chattering in politics in the residence halls and stuff because people are like keep to themselves in their rooms, but like then social media get a lot more intense.
So in Spain, actually, it's not the popular vote, the one that votes, but it's actually like the city vote counts less than the country vote. So that's a point I wanted to make. Yeah, it's my first election I've spent in the US. And actually last year I was a little bit naive and I said to myself, oh, it's so exciting. I'll be in the US for a US election. That's gonna be exciting. But I've really seen people getting really polarized and it's not, I feel like also this year has been like very like polarizing already, but I think it's been a hard year to be here and just like depending on like what opinions you have. But also seeing it from like the outside, it's really hard not to get involved in it, even if you cannot vote. So it's like, sometimes I try to find like the line of, okay, don't get there because you are not voting. But at the same time, you have something to say because the US election has a repercussion and like in the whole world. Like whatever the US, like whoever the US president is changing, like, and it's affecting all other countries. Like, yeah.
I really appreciate that point, Montse, and I think a lot of times we don't think about that or contextualize it as US citizens as we're participating, that there's a global impact of elections here, what happens, and so that, and I would just say we welcome your involvement and encourage you to keep doing that.
Yeah, but the whole world is watching the elections. Like, I don't think anybody in the US like watches the Spanish elections, whoever is the president, but whoever the US president is, like, my Spanish, like, I watch the Spanish news and they talk about the US elections like almost every day.
Yeah, same. When Obama was elected in 2008, like they cover more election information about Obama and Bush. I'm sorry, I don't really remember who ran against Obama. I was young, but I remember there was more news to that than the actual Vietnamese election.
Yeah, I think
such a good perspective. Oh, go ahead, Guney.
I think the global importance of United States makes it like very prevalent in other countries' national media. In Turkey as well, like I never watched presidential debates, but I always know who won and like who is which party is from and stuff. This is the first time I watched presidential debates since I'm in the United States, and in my country, there was only one debate. Now we don't have presidential debates most of the time. When the local elect, there was, since ruling party lost major cities in Turkey, they wanted to redo the election, and there was not a presidential debate, but the municipality debate. That's the only debate that I watch in Turkey, but the particular debate I think was, I liked the vice presidential debate, to be honest, but presidential debate was a kind of bit chaotic, but what's I have been told that like, it's not the case most of the time. It's the worst presidential debate ever. That's what I've been told anyways. Other than that, I agree with the polarization aspect arguments of Montse, because Turkey is also like becoming very polarized against the seculars and the Islamists, and I think I can see the like similar tendency in the United States as well. People not like, even like family members, if they have different political opinions, they don't want to talk about at all, and like they just want to leave the room and whatever. And I think it's very sad, because in order to have democracy, you need to meet in the common ground.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. So I want to give each of you, the politics are polarizing and they can be tough. So I want to end with giving you a chance to share something about your home country that you just want folks to know. So it can be about your political process, or it can just be something you want to share that as US citizens, we need to know about the wonderful countries you're coming from.
I think I can say that like voting is important, go and vote, United States. But you just take voting as a means of democracy, because voting can also be very undemocratic, which is the case in Turkey. Like the referendum just can turn into something like a majority controls the minority, and that's why you cannot see voting is equal to democracy.
Jerry or Montse, what do we need to know? I know just one thing is not fair.
I mean, I agree with Guney. I think the US is pretty similar to Spain, like in the democratic like representation of the people. But yeah, like never take voting for granted, because when in Spain we had a voting once like in Catalonia to choose our self-determination as a like autonomous country, and like the police came and repressed people and like incarcerated the political leaders. So yeah, never take for granted voting and the democratic act that it is.
Jerry, what about you?
Yeah. Oh God, I'm just like resonating with everything that my other panelists have said. But yeah, voting, I think like if you are able to vote, please make a plan to vote, go vote. Like I said before, you know, like I think like in my country, it's a holiday and everybody like make plans to go to vote, and it's like a whole thing, and I've been involved since a kid, and I could not like fathom that like, oh my God, there's like less than 50% of people who showed up to vote. So like if you have the opportunity to vote, please do. I also think about I don't know if this is one thing or not, but yeah, like I said, mentioned earlier, like, you know, there are people in Southeast Asia usually get the assumption that we're communist country, and there's like low lack of democracy and so forth. And I think and then there are people who believe that Vietnam is still at war, and like that we don't have gas and electricity. And so I was like, we do, we do have technology and things, and we appreciate voting in our country, even though it's only a party. We believe that the government is the worker for the people, which is like the main thing about the Socialist Party. So I think voting is important, and like being able to criticize the government is a huge privilege. I'm not even an advantage. It's a huge privilege. Like being able to criticize the government without being arrested is a huge privilege that I've had been in Vietnam. So I think, you know, voting is one of those things that you can do for civic engagement.
Well, I want to thank the three of you. Montse and Jerry, I've had the privilege to visit both of your countries and see a little bit for myself. Guney, Turkey's high on my list. I didn't make it this last time I traveled, but I'm really just grateful for you all sharing some of your story and telling us a little bit about what the process, what it looks like, what's similar, what's different. In terms of final thoughts, I don't want to add too much. What I heard that was so compelling is that the world is watching what we do this fall, and that the impacts of the US election are so important around the world. And so just that plea for folks to vote, to take advantage of this opportunity we have, get out and cast your vote if that's something you're able to do. It was just so clear from all three of you that there's a desire that you see your peers here in the US take advantage of this opportunity. And so what a great place to end our panel today. Just go vote and take advantage of the opportunity you have. Montse, Jerry, Guney, thank you again so much. You were all wonderful. And just so attendees know, this has been recorded, and it will be available through the Civic Engagement website through Slice. And so please share with others. We should have that up in the next week or so. And would encourage you to share this. It was such great information and such great insights. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Lance.
Yeah.